Let me get to the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Here we go. I was so quick to hit the button. I didn't even change the tab that I needed to get to. Rocket Mortgage Classic. So when we look at the bucket system here, obviously I just reviewed the whole sweet spot process for the Travelers Championship to give you an idea how well the sweet spot process did last week, to give you confidence to use it this week. When we look at this, we're looking at the projections. This is what I project to be inside the top 10 based off of success rate, how many golfers are in the bucket this week, the success rate, or I'm sorry, the strength of field points that go towards it. Basically every component I can use using the field we have this week versus the historic stats we've seen. And that's where the projections come from. So believe it or not, it's kind of boring this week. And I think a lot of that has to do with this event starting in 2019. So we don't really have a lot of mature data that we can use, and nothing's really normalized. So I want to say a lot of these numbers, I mean, if we were to give us this tournament 2 or 3 more years, we'd see a little bit more disparity versus like with which bucket is more important than another. Because basically what I'm going to tell you is most of these projections are 0 to 2. So you can see last year one, it does say 1.01 to 1.68. And I obviously told you round down with this number and you round up with this number, but we need a 2-point buffer and we always want to go down before we go up. So this automatically goes to 0 because this isn't greater than 2. And I also like to check myself with this max projection over here. This isn't on the cheat sheet, by the way. So just to show you the cheat sheet once again, you can see everything here as well. So everything I'm going over, you can follow along with me on the cheat sheet. But yeah, looking at this, every bucket is 0 out of 2. And oh, by the way, if you want to kind of do your own research, so if you go to the cheat sheet, what I'd suggest you to do is look at the projections. By the way, link for the cheat sheet is in the description. You follow the projections here. So 0 out of 2. And then you would go to the dream sheet. So keep this in mind. Last year 1 is the bucket you're looking at for this top one. And then obviously you just read left to right. Last year 2, last year 3, 4, 5, 6, and then obviously into the other buckets. So you would come to the dream sheet portion, put that filter on there, and then basically what you want to do is filter out by last year ones. Of course, I'm gonna change my salaries to be the high. Filter or sort by salaries. So basically when you do it this way, you're looking at all the last year ones right here. And I'm saying 0 to 2, I have projected to be inside the top 10. It's up to you to find the 2 golfers you want to play. Do some of these buckets fail? Yes, they do. How often do they fail? Not very often. Like last week was the highest, or the Travelers Championship, because I review every single week. For the Travelers Championship, we had technically 2 failed buckets. That's as much as we've seen in the last 7-8 weeks. Is 2. We've seen 1 a bunch, only 1 failed bucket. So it's really, you get to choose which one it is. Which one do you think is going to fail? Personally, I don't really think of it that way. I just follow the sweet spot process 100%. And if there's 0 to 2, look at how many good names are up here. You got Finau, Tom Kim, Cam Davis, Steven Yeager, Chris Kirk, Taylor Moore, and I probably cut it off there. Still some decent plays you can do here in like the mid-low 7K range and the high 6K range, but it's 0 out of 2. So if you're not going, if you're starting with Tony Finau, Tom Kim, you might want to highly consider, only playing just 1 more of these guys. Maybe don't play any of them at all. Maybe you just play the 1 guy and you fade the rest. So basically that's what you'd want to do with each of these buckets based off of the projections that I have. So last year 1, 0 to 2. Last year 2, 0 to 2. Last year 3, 0 to 2. Last year 4, 0 to 2. There are 6 golfers in that bucket. There were 10 in the previous one. So you also keep that in mind. The chances just based off of volume alone, not super great. And then you have 0 to 2 last year 5s as well. These are missed cuts from last year. Doesn't prove to be a very successful bucket, so you should watch out for that. 2 out of 5 last year 6s, so did not plays from last year. that's a really interesting one. So again, if you were to go to, I'm going to go to the cheat sheet. This is exactly everything you can see as well. If you go into last year bucket, clear everything and scroll down to the 6, you can see every golfer who did not play last year, including Morikawa, Thomas, Matsuyama, Im, you know, just those 4 golfers alone. Kind of, I would say, elite company in this field. Then you drop down to Brian Harmon. Ludwig Aberg isn't going to get any love in my model because he's a rookie and hasn't really played that much on tour, but the guy's a stud. $8,700 is worth a consideration. And I know a lot of people, I've heard so much throughout the industry, just from today, listening while I'm working and all that stuff. Lots of attention is on him, and rightfully so. But anyways, out of this bucket, you can choose up to 2 to 5 golfers. So this is going to be a very popular bucket to choose from regardless. And it's a bucket that you probably want to pinpoint and use when trying to anchor your plays as well as narrow down your player pool. So again, that was 2 to 5. And if you want to feel comfortable, 4 might be the max you really want to play. But by all means, I think that's a bucket you want to pick from and start. And then we go into last week. Again, 0 to 2, 0 to 2, 0 to 2. This bucket here, last week 4s, that's also 0 to 2, but there are only 3 golfers in that bucket. So keep that in mind. You probably want 1 or none, basically. Last week 5s are missed cuts from the Travelers Championship, 1 to 3, and that's 100% frequency rate. So that means at least 1 golfer has been in this bucket every single year for this event to finish inside the top 10. Or I should just say this bucket has produced 1 top 10 finisher every single year. I think that's probably the better way to say. So keep that in mind. Having a missed cut last week does not hurt your chances. So if there was a golfer that you thought, maybe I shouldn't play him. What was it, Max Homa? Is Max Homa one of those guys that didn't, let's see here. Yeah, last week 5. Him, Morikawa, they both missed the cut, and I'm just using the bucket numbers here. I know this bucket means they've missed the cut. Those are decent plays. Benny Ann, Taylor Moore, Christian Bezainhout, and then you got a slew of them down here. So yeah, having a missed cut from last week isn't that detrimental. You probably want at least 1 in your group. Last week 6s are golfers who did not play last week. So that also is 1 to 3 for your projection. Both of these buckets have the majority of your golfers from the field, so that probably plays a huge factor in why these projections are higher than any of these. But I think you just stick to the projections. The course history buckets only have 3 years of data compiled in there. I would definitely say the data is not mature yet, or at least the buckets aren't going to provide you a lot of fruit. So, but I still think the projections are actually fair. You know, every single week, we don't really see a lot of golfers from the course history 1 bucket being inside the top 10. Usually there aren't a lot. There are only 6. You know, so you got to be mindful of that. But still 0 to 2, I think 1, you know, be comfortable playing 1. And I guess let's take a look at the names. That's also a thing you have to take into account. And I'm going to use my sheet this time. Again, you can do this on the cheat sheet. So we look at course history 1s. Tom Kim is the top guy. Chris Kirk, Taylor Moore. We just talked about Taylor Moore having a missed cut. Taylor Pendrith had a missed cut last week. Matt Wallace had a missed cut last week. So these are guys that I think are in play. I certainly, 2 is definitely the max you want to play from this bucket. So if you're thinking about playing 3 or 4 guys from this bucket, maybe reverse your thought process. Don't do that. And I'm pretty confident. Like this is a projection we see almost every single week for this bucket, course history 1s. And I guess there's not enough data to determine if course history is sticky at this golf course. And we also see like just random players every single year playing this. This is one of those events that a lot of your lower names are guys that like Justin Thomas, believe it or not, is trying to fight for FedEx Cup points. And that's why he's at this event. Because he's been playing so terribly this whole year. He's at an event like this where normally elite golfers don't come to. And like Patrick Cantlay came here last year. I don't think he really needed the FedEx Cup points, but sometimes you have these elite golfers coming. But this is definitely like a B tier tournament, if not a C tier tournament. So you're going to get a lot of golfers in the OWGR between 150 to 500, essentially. So be cognizant of that. I think the course history projection is just fine. 0 to 2. The next one is where we would see a higher number usually, like we'd see 1 to 3, 0 to 2 this week. So just know, and I guess the minimum we've seen in this bucket is 1. So again, this has a 100% frequency rate, like some of the buckets we've talked about in the past. So 2 has course history 1. So keep that in mind. But you can see we've had at least 1 every single year, but we've never seen more than 1. That's where the min maxes come from up here. And then course history 2, we've got 1 there. Up to 3 though. So again, that's kind of like the projection I was just talking about. Course history 3s are just middle of the road course history. So those are golfers with good results mixed in with bad results, more often than not. But also, it isn't just that. It's people with like, hey, one year they finished 20th, the next year they missed the cut. They would also be in there as well. So keep all of that in mind. That's a 1 to 3 projection, and that kind of fits along with the min and maxes. And then 0 to 2 course history 4s, 0 to 2 course history 5s, 0 to 2 course history 6s. These are golfers who've never played at the event. So this takes into account strength of field, which this week we have some known golfers that have never played this event yet. I believe Colin Morikawa is one of them. Let me scroll up. Yeah, so this column right here, you can see Colin Morikawa doesn't have course history. Neither does Justin Thomas. Ludwig Aberg is down here. Was that Aaron Rai also doesn't have any. Nikolai Højgaard doesn't have any course history. Those are some pretty talented golfers. So considering, or just thinking maybe 1, 2 golfers from that bucket could finish inside the top 10 is pretty realistic. So I would definitely consider that. Going into the recent form buckets. Recent form 1, 0 to 2. There are only 2 golfers in that bucket. So I'd play 1 at most. And this is your best recent form, by the way. These are golfers who have had top 20 finishes over the last 7 weeks, averaged out as top 20 finishes. Let's take a look, just for the hell of it. Let's take a look. Who are those guys? Austin Eckroat and Doug Ghim. A lot of Doug Ghim love this week. Now, those 2 guys don't inspire me a lot of confidence to put them together, but if you wanted to, you certainly can. Again, the projections are always 0 to 2. That's the min. The minimum maximum, I should say, which is kind of a funny thing to say. Then we have recent form 2s, 3s. So recent form 2, 0 to 2. Recent form 3. This is a bucket we've seen this projection. This projection's pretty common with this bucket. So 2 to 5. Usually it's 1 to 3 or 2 to 4. 2 to 5 is a little high. If you don't feel comfortable playing 5, that's fine. I mean, I have this conservative maximum projection over here, up to 4. Then we have 2 to 4, it's 2 to 4 recent form 4s, but I always use this bucket to determine my minimum. So because the max for the conservative projection is 3, that means the minimum has to be 1. So I would go 1 to 4 recent form 4s. And once again, the optimizer, I have that in here, recent form 4s, 1 to 4. So I build that in. Recent form 5, 0 to 2, recent form 6 is 0 to 2. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I'll touch salaries last. We'll go to stroke chain stats. So if you're unfamiliar with stroke chain stats, I have a video in the description, like how I do stroke chain stats. I have a video in the description that explains the bucket system. You could go to that portion of the video and understand what these buckets mean. But I'm really just looking at off the tee and putting. Those are the only stats I really care about. Approach comes with some of these buckets. So like stroke chain 1 is all stats are positive. And that projection's 1 to 4. You can tell which golfers these are just by going to the cheat sheet and sorting by the stroke gain bucket. So make sure you have no filter set and just go A to Z. You can see it's all color coded based off of the stroke gain buckets. So we can already see some of these golfers in here. Tony Finau, Ricky Fowler, Max Homa, Tom Kim, Sung Jae Im. Here's one thing you have to consider with this bucket. The projection's 1 to 4, so it's pretty conservative actually. But you have to remember, hey, these 3 golfers by themselves, or are together, I should say, could finish inside the top 10. And this would satisfy the projection for that bucket. So we could have Max Homa in the top 10. We could have Ricky Fowler in the top 10. Tony Finau in the top 10. Guess what? You can't play all 3 of those guys. And it might be questionable to play 2 of those guys. So that projection 1 to 4 makes sense. And that's something you have to consider. But look at all of the good names here. Probably cut out the 6K guys. Names we don't really need to consider. But I like Thomas Dietrich this week. Ludwig Aberg, I like that. Probably going to stay away from Brian Harman when he's that highly priced. It's only good at like the RSM Classic where there's really no elite golfers in. I would much rather have a Finau, like Sung Jae Im lineup and just completely skip Brian Harman. You know, I don't care. I'm just not going to do it. And then obviously Keegan was the winner last week. Is there going to be any, you know, hangover from that? Who knows? So anyways, 1 to 4 is the projection for this bucket. How many golfers are going to finish inside the top 10? The projection is 1 to 4. With that, you choose your player pool. You want 1, you want 2, you want 3. Probably not 4, but you could put up to 4 golfers from here in your lineup. And then the rest of it kind of follows suit. 0 to 2 strokes gained 2, 1 to 3 strokes gained 3, 0 to 2 strokes gained 4, 0 to 2 strokes gained 5, and 0 to 2 strokes gained 6. So that covers the bucket system.